The rancher who broke 100 hearts stood face to face with a woman who wanted nothing from him but work, and somehow that terrified him more than anything else ever had. What happens when a man built walls so high even money couldn't scale them, then meets someone who doesn't bother trying to climb? This is the story of Caleb Ryland and Mara Bennett, a collision between grief and grit, between running and standing still. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if it moves you, hit that like button. Now, let's begin. The August heat came down on Ryland Ranch like a fist. Dust hung in the air, turning sunlight into something thick and amber, the kind of light that made everything look older than it was. Caleb Ryland stood on the porch of the main house, one boot propped against the railing, watching his foreman drag a broken gate across the yard. The metal screamed against the dirt. "Need to replace that," Dutch called up to him, wiping his forehead with a rag that had gone from white to the color of rust years ago. Caleb didn't answer. He rarely did these days. Dutch had been working the ranch for 15 years, long enough to know when silence meant agreement and when it meant the boss wasn't listening at all. This was the latter. Dutch dropped the gate, let it clang against the ground, and walked toward the barn without another word. Caleb stayed where he was, arms crossed, staring out at the land that stretched farther than most people could imagine. 3,000 acres of Montana grassland, cattle that numbered in the hundreds, a house big enough to get lost in. He owned it all, and it meant exactly nothing. He'd turned 38 last month. No party, no cake. Dutch had mentioned it once, got a look that could have stopped a train, and never brought it up again. Caleb had spent the day fixing fence posts alone, hands blistered, mind quiet. That was how he liked it now. Quiet. Empty. Safe. The sound of an engine broke through the afternoon stillness. Caleb's eyes narrowed. They weren't expecting anyone. Deliveries came on Tuesdays. It was Friday. A truck came up the long driveway, old enough that the rattling could be heard a quarter-mile out. Not a local vehicle. Caleb would have recognized it. He knew every truck in the county, mostly because he avoided all of them. The truck stopped near the barn. The engine cut out. The door opened. And then she stepped out. Caleb didn't move, but something in his chest did. A small, unwelcome lurch, like missing a step in the dark. She was big. Not in the way people whispered about behind hands, but in the way that made her presence undeniable. Broad shoulders, thick arms, a body that looked like it had done hard work and wasn't apologizing for it. Her hair was pulled back in a braid that had come half undone, dark strands sticking to her neck. Her face was sunburned across the nose and cheeks, freckles standing out like paint splatter. She wore jeans that had seen better years and a men's work shirt with the sleeves rolled up. She looked tired. She looked real. Dutch appeared from the barn, stopped short when he saw her. "Help you?" "I'm looking for work," she said. Her voice was low, steady. No hesitation. Dutch blinked. "Work." "That's right." "Doing what?" "Whatever needs doing." Caleb watched from the porch, still as stone. Women came to the ranch sometimes. They always did. Daughters of neighboring ranchers, friends of friends. Women who'd heard about the rich, lonely cowboy and figured they'd take a shot. They wore tight jeans and pretty smiles. They laughed too loud. They touched his arm and asked questions they already knew the answers to. This woman wasn't doing any of that. Dutch glanced up at the porch, then back at her. "We're not hiring right now." "You've got a broken gate over there," she said, nodding toward the twisted metal Dutch had just abandoned. "Fence line on the west side sagging. I saw it on the drive in. Your barn door's hanging crooked, and unless I'm wrong, you're about 2 men short for a spread this size." Dutch's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You some kind of inspector?" "I'm someone who needs work," she said, "and you're someone who needs help. Seems simple." Caleb felt something unfamiliar stir in him. Not attraction. He'd buried that years ago, so deep he'd thought it was gone for good. No, this was something else. Curiosity, maybe. Or disbelief. He pushed off the railing and walked down the porch steps, boots heavy on the wood. Dutch turned, relief washing over his face like Caleb was cavalry arriving. The woman turned too. And when her eyes met his, Caleb felt it again. That strange lurch, like the ground wasn't quite where he'd left it. Her eyes were gray. Not the soft gray of morning mist, but the hard gray of iron. They didn't dart away, didn't drop. She looked at him the way someone looks at a mountain, aware of its size, but not afraid of it. "Caleb Ryland," Dutch said, gesturing awkwardly. "He owns the place." "Mara Bennett," she said. She didn't offer her hand, didn't smile, just stood there, waiting. Caleb studied her. Up close, he could see the dust on her clothes, the dirt under her nails, the way her shoulders were set like she'd been carrying weight for miles and had no intention of setting it down. There was a small scar on her chin, white against tanned skin. Her boots were men's, too big, laces double knotted. "You've got ranch experience," Caleb said. Not a question. 4 years in Wyoming, 2 in Nevada before that. Worked cattle, horses, fence, machinery. Can weld if you've got the equipment. "Why'd you leave?" "Time to move on." That's not an answer. Her expression didn't change. "It's the only one I'm giving." Dutch made a noise somewhere between a cough and a laugh, then tried to cover it. Caleb felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, the desire to push, to dig, to know. He didn't like it. "We're not hiring," he said, echoing Dutch's words, but with more finality. "You should be," Mara said. She glanced around the yard, taking in the details with an eye that was clearly trained. "You're running lean. Probably lost someone recently, or had someone quit. Either way, you're behind on maintenance. That's expensive. Hiring me would be cheaper. You don't know what I pay." "Doesn't matter. I'll work for room and board until you see what I can do. After that, we negotiate." Caleb stared at her. "Room and board, and 3 meals. You're serious?" "Do I look like I'm joking?" She didn't. She looked like someone who'd driven a long way on an empty tank and was making a last stand. There was no desperation in her voice, but there was something else, a kind of quiet determination that was somehow louder than begging. Caleb should have said no. Should have sent her back down the driveway and forgotten about her by dinner. That's what he'd done with everyone else for the past 5 years. Kept them at arm's length. Kept himself locked up tight. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she didn't look at him like he was a prize to be won. Maybe it was the fact that she'd noticed the sagging fence line, something his own men had missed. Maybe it was just the sheer audacity of showing up and demanding work like she had every right to it. Or maybe it was the way she stood there, unflinching, waiting for an answer without needing one. 1 week, Caleb heard himself say. "Trial, you don't cut it, you're gone." Mara nodded once. "Fair." Dutch's eyebrows shot up so fast, Caleb thought they might leave his face entirely. "You can stay in the bunkhouse," Caleb continued, ignoring Dutch's look. "Meals are at 6, noon, and 7. You're late. You don't eat. Work starts at 5:30. Any questions?" "Where do you want me to start?" Caleb almost smiled. Almost. "Gate first. Then the barn door. After that, Dutch will give you a list." "Understood." Mara turned toward her truck, popped the tailgate, and pulled out a duffel bag that looked like it had been through a war. Dutch waited until she was out of earshot, then turned to Caleb. "Boss, what the hell was that?" "Hiring someone. You haven't hired anyone in 3 years? You made me turn away Bobby Preston's son last month, and he's practically family." "Bobby Preston's son drinks. And her?" Dutch gestured toward Mara, who was walking toward the bunkhouse without looking back. "You don't know a damn thing about her." "I know she noticed the fence," Caleb said. "That's more than most." He walked back to the house before Dutch could argue. By the time Caleb came out for dinner, Mara had already fixed the gate. He stood in the yard, staring at the metal that had been twisted and useless 3 hours ago. Now it hung straight, the welds clean, the hinges oiled. It swung smooth when he tested it. Dutch walked up beside him, shaking his head. "She asked to borrow the welder. I figured she'd maybe tack it together, make it hold for a few days. But she—" He gestured helplessly. "Yeah," Caleb said. "She's in the barn now, fixing the door." Caleb didn't respond. He was still looking at the gate, trying to remember the last time someone had finished a job without being told twice. He walked to the barn. Inside, the smell of hay and horses mixed with the sharp scent of fresh-cut wood. Mara was on her knees, screwdriver in hand, rehinging the door with new hardware she must have found in the supply shed. Her braid had come completely undone now, hair falling around her face. She didn't notice him at first. Caleb watched her work, watched the way her hands moved, confident, economical, no wasted motion. Watched the set of her jaw, the focus in her eyes. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, she was just doing the job right. "Where'd you learn to weld?" he asked. Mara didn't startle. She finished tightening the screw, then sat back on her heels and looked up at him. "My father, he ran a shop in Nebraska." "Ran?" "Ran." She stood, dusting off her knees. "Dead 6 years now." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He wasn't a good man." She said it without emotion, like she was reporting the weather. "But he taught me steel. I'll give him that." Caleb didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Mara seemed fine with the silence. She tested the door, swinging it open and closed. It moved smooth as butter. "Dinner's soon," Caleb said finally. "I'll wash up." She walked past him, close enough that he caught the smell of sweat and metal and something underneath. Soap, maybe, or shampoo. Something clean. He stayed in the barn after she left, standing in the space she'd just occupied, trying to figure out why his chest felt tight. Dinner was awkward. The ranch hands, Dutch, Tommy, and Ray, sat at the long table in the dining room, forks scraping against plates, eyes darting between Caleb and Mara like they were watching a play they didn't understand. Mara sat at the far end, eating stew with the same focused efficiency she brought to everything else. She didn't make small talk, didn't ask questions, just ate. Tommy, who was 23 and thought he was charming, finally broke. "So, Mara, where you from originally?" "Nebraska." "Yeah, what part?" "Small town. You wouldn't know it." "Try me." Mara looked at him. Just looked. Tommy's smile faltered. "Probably wouldn't," she agreed and went back to her stew. Ray, who was older and knew better, hid a smirk behind his coffee mug. Caleb ate in silence, but he was listening. He was always listening, even when he pretended not to be. "You got family?" Tommy tried again, apparently a glutton for punishment. "No." "Friends?" "Not anymore." "Boyfriend." "Tommy," Dutch said, voice sharp. "What?" "I'm just asking." "Don't," Caleb said quietly. The single word cut through the room like a blade. Tommy shut his mouth so fast his teeth clicked. Mara didn't react. She finished her stew, stood, and carried her plate to the kitchen. When she came back, she nodded to the table in general. "Thanks for the meal. I'll see you at 5:30. She left. The men sat in silence for a moment. "Well," Ray said eventually. "She's different." Tommy snorted. "That's one word for it." "Enough," Caleb said. "Boss, I'm just saying." "I know what you're saying, and I'm telling you to stop." Tommy held up his hands in surrender. Dutch and Ray exchanged glances. Caleb stood, taking his plate to the kitchen. Through the window, he could see the bunkhouse light flick on. Mara's silhouette moved across the window, then disappeared. He stood there longer than he should have, watching the light, before finally turning away. The next morning, Mara was up before 5:30. Caleb found her in the equipment shed, elbow deep in the engine of the old tractor that had been giving them trouble for months. She had grease on her face, and her hair tied back with what looked like a piece of baling twine. "Problem?" Caleb asked. "Fuel line's cracked," Mara said without looking up. "And your carburetor's about 3 cleanings past due. You've been running it rough." "We've been busy." "Busy's not an excuse for bad maintenance." She pulled her arm out, holding a rubber hose that was split down the middle. "This should have been replaced a year ago." "You got a replacement?" "Not here. I'd need to go into town." Caleb pulled his wallet out, extracted 2 20s, and held them out. Mara looked at the money, then at him. "I said I'd work for room and board. And I'm telling you to go get a fuel line. Take the truck. Auto parts stores on Main Street. Can't miss it." Mara wiped her hands on her jeans, took the money. Their fingers brushed. Just for a second. Just enough. "I'll be back in 2 hours," she said. She was back in 90 minutes with the part and change. She didn't ask for help installing it. By lunch, the tractor was running smoother than it had in years. Dutch stood next to Caleb, both of them watching Mara test the engine. She's good, Dutch admitted. Yeah. You gonna keep her? Caleb didn't answer. He was watching the way Mara's face relaxed when the engine purred to life, a small, satisfied smile that was gone almost as fast as it appeared. Yeah, he said finally. I think I am. Yeah. The week passed faster than Caleb expected. Mara worked from dawn until well past dusk, tackling the list of repairs that had been piling up for months. She fixed the fence line on the west side, patched the roof on the hay barn, rebuilt the chute system in the cattle pen with modifications that made it work twice as well. She didn't complain, didn't slow down, didn't ask for help. The men watched her with a mixture of respect and confusion. They weren't used to someone who worked harder than they did, weren't used to someone who didn't want anything from them. Not friendship, not approval, not attention. Mara ate meals in silence, answered questions with the minimum number of words required, and disappeared into the bunkhouse every night without fanfare. And Caleb watched. He told himself he was just making sure she was working out, just doing his due diligence as an employer, just being responsible. But that was a lie, and he knew it. He watched the way she moved, economical, precise, no wasted energy. Watched the way she handled the horses, firm but gentle, like she spoke their language. Watched the way she'd pause sometimes, hand on a fence post, looking out at the land with an expression he couldn't quite read. On the 5th day, he found himself working next to her without really planning it. They were mending fence on the north pasture, replacing posts that had rotted through. The work was hot, hard, and monotonous, perfect for not talking, except Caleb found himself wanting to talk. You said you worked in Wyoming, he said, driving a post into the ground. Yeah. Doing this? Similar. Why'd you leave? Mara was quiet for a moment, wrapping wire around a post with practiced hands. The work dried up. In Wyoming? That's cattle country. So is this. Caleb looked at her. She didn't look back. You're running from something, he said. Not an accusation, just a fact. Mara's hands stilled, and then she went back to wrapping wire. Aren't we all? It was the first personal thing she'd said since she arrived, the first crack in the wall. Caleb should have left it alone, should have gone back to hammering posts and keeping his mouth shut. I lost someone, he said instead. 5 years ago. Her name was Sarah. It was sudden. Mara didn't stop working, but he saw her shoulders shift, listening. Car accident, Caleb continued. She was driving back from town. Truck ran a red light. She was dead before the ambulance got there. He hammered the post harder than necessary. Everyone said I should move on, get back out there, told me she'd want me to be happy. Did she? Probably, yeah. He stopped hammering, but I don't care what she'd want. I care that she's gone and I'm still here and nothing feels right without her. Mara finally looked at him. Her gray eyes were steady, unflinching. So you built a fortress? Excuse me? You built a fortress, she repeated. Big ranch, empty house, work that never ends. People you keep at arm's length. That's not living. That's hiding. Caleb felt anger flare, hot and sudden. You don't know anything about me. I know you hired me because I didn't want anything from you. Mara went back to the wire. I know you push people away before they can get close. I know you're standing out here in 90-degree heat fixing a fence you could pay someone else to fix because it's easier than being alone with your thoughts. She twisted the wire tight. And I know you think if you just work hard enough, it'll hurt less. Does it? Caleb asked, voice rough. No, Mara said, but at least you're tired when you try to sleep. They worked in silence after that, but it felt different, less empty. Mott. On the 7th day, Caleb found Mara in the barn at dawn, sitting on a hay bale with her head in her hands. He almost left, almost gave her the privacy she clearly wanted, but something stopped him. You okay? He asked. Mara's head came up. Her eyes were red, but dry. Fine. You're a terrible liar. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. Yeah, I know. Caleb sat down on the hay bale across from her, giving her space but staying close. Want to talk about it? Not particularly. Okay. They sat there in the growing light, the barn slowly warming around them. A horse nickered from one of the stalls. Somewhere outside, Dutch was starting the morning feed. "I had a daughter," Mara said suddenly. Caleb went still. "She'd be 7 now. Would have been. Mara's voice caught. She pressed her palms against her eyes. "She got sick. Pneumonia. It happened so fast. One day she was fine, the next she was in the hospital, and then—" She dropped her hands. 3 days. That's all it took." "Jesus," Caleb breathed. "Her father blamed me. Said I should have noticed sooner, should have taken her to the doctor earlier. Maybe he was right. I don't know." Mara's voice was flat now, reciting facts. "He left a month after the funeral, took everything that wasn't nailed down, left me with debt and a house I couldn't afford and memories I couldn't escape." "So you ran?" "So I ran," Mara agreed. "Sold what I could, worked when I could, kept moving because if I stopped, I'd have to feel it. And I can't." Her voice broke. "I can't feel it and still function." Caleb understood that. He understood that better than he'd understood anything in years. He stood, crossed the space between them, and sat down next to her on the hay bale. Not touching, just present. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be." "I am anyway." Mara looked at him. Really looked. "You're the first person who hasn't tried to fix it. Who hasn't told me it'll get better, or that she's in a better place, or any of that bullshit." "Because it doesn't get better," Caleb said. "It just gets different." "Yeah." Mara's voice was whisper soft. "Yeah, exactly." They sat there as the sun came up, 2 broken people in a barn full of horses, and for the first time in 5 years, Caleb didn't feel quite so alone. Ban Puang. That afternoon, Caleb called Mara into his office. It was a room he rarely used. Too many memories of Sarah helping with the books, her laugh echoing off the walls. But it felt right for this. Mara stood in the doorway, dusty and tired from a morning moving cattle. "You needed something?" "Your trial's up," Caleb said. Something flickered across her face. She hit it fast, but he caught it. Fear. "I want to hire you permanent," he continued. "Standard ranch pay, room and board included. Benefits if you stay past 6 months." Mara's expression didn't change. "What's the catch?" "No catch." "There's always a catch." Caleb leaned back in his chair. "Okay, one condition. You stop sleeping in your truck." Mara blinked. "How did you—" "Dutch saw you the second night. Said you were curled up in the cab with a blanket." Caleb held up a hand before she could protest. "I don't care why. But if you're working here, you're using the bunkhouse. Deal?" Mara was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Deal." "Good." Caleb pulled out a contract he'd printed that morning, pushed it across the desk. "Sign here." Mara picked up the pen. Her hand shook, just slightly, just enough to notice. She signed her name in quick, determined strokes. When she looked up, there was something different in her eyes. Something that looked almost like hope. "Thank you," she said. "You earned it." Mara stood, turned to leave, then stopped. "Caleb?" It was the first time she'd used his name. It sounded strange in her voice. Good strange. "Yeah?" "The fortress thing. I'm sorry, that was out of line." "No," Caleb said. "It wasn't, it was true." Mara nodded slowly. Then she left, closing the door quietly behind her. Caleb sat in the empty office, looking at the contract with her signature, and felt the walls he'd built start to crack. That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. He gave up around 2 in the morning, pulled on jeans and a shirt, and walked outside. The ranch was quiet except for the usual night sounds. Cattle shifting, horses moving in their stalls, the distant call of an owl. He was halfway to the barn when he saw her. Mara was sitting on the corral fence, legs dangling, looking up at the stars. She'd showered. Her hair was loose and damp, catching the moonlight. She looked younger like this. Softer. Caleb should have gone back to the house, given her space, but his feet carried him forward. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. Mara glanced over. "Seems to be a theme." Caleb climbed up, sat on the fence beside her. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel her warmth in the cool night air. "It's quiet here," Mara said. In a good way. Not like city quiet, where you can still hear traffic and sirens and people. This is real quiet. You get used to it. Do you like it? Caleb thought about that. I did. Once. And now? Now it's just quiet. Mara nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars wheel overhead. Caleb found himself aware of every breath she took, every small shift of her weight on the fence. Can I ask you something? Mara said. Sure. Why'd you really hire me? Caleb considered lying, considered deflecting. But something about the darkness, about the honesty she'd given him that morning, made him want to tell the truth. Because you didn't want anything from me, he said. Everyone who comes here wants something, money, status, a story to tell their friends. But you just wanted work, just wanted to be left alone. He paused. I understood that. Is that it? No. Caleb took a breath. You reminded me that broken things can still be useful, that just because something's damaged doesn't mean it's done. He looked at her. I needed to remember that. Mara met his eyes. In the moonlight, hers looked silver instead of gray. I'm not good at this, she said quietly. At being around people, at trusting, at... She gestured vaguely. Any of it. Me neither. So what are we doing? I don't know, Caleb admitted, but I don't want you to leave. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and dangerous. Mara's hand moved on the fence rail. For a second, Caleb thought she might reach for him, but she didn't. I don't want to leave either, she said instead. It wasn't a declaration, wasn't a promise, but it was something, and for now, that was enough. They sat on the fence until the sky started to lighten in the east, two people learning how to be less alone, one quiet moment at a time. The change happened slowly, then all at once. 3 weeks after Mara signed the contract, Dutch walked into the barn to find her shoulder deep in the belly of the old combine harvester, the one they'd been planning to sell for scrap. She had parts spread across the floor in an organized chaos that only she seemed to understand. What are you doing? Dutch asked. Mara didn't look up. Saving you about $15,000. That thing hasn't run in 2 years. It will by Friday. Dutch shook his head and walked away. On Friday, the combine roared to life, black smoke coughing from the exhaust before clearing to a steady hum. Caleb heard it from the house and came out to find Mara sitting in the driver's seat, grease-stained and grinning like she'd just won something. It was the first real smile he'd seen from her. Something in his chest twisted. The town noticed her, of course. Towns like Millervale always noticed. On Mara's first trip into the feed store, she walked into a silence so complete you could hear dust settling. Eyes followed her down the aisles. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, then resumed in whispers. She came back to the ranch with the feed order and a tight jaw. They're real friendly in there, she said, dumping bags onto the truck bed with more force than necessary. Caleb was checking inventory on his clipboard. What happened? Nothing happened. That's the problem. Mara wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. They just stared, like I was some kind of exhibit. They'll get used to you. Will they? Mara's voice had an edge to it. Or will they just keep whispering about the fat woman working at Ryland Ranch? Caleb looked up. You heard that? Didn't have to. I can read faces just fine. He wanted to tell her it didn't matter what they thought. Wanted to say something comforting, but Mara had already turned back to unloading, her movements sharp and angry. And Caleb had never been good with words anyway. That night at dinner, Tommy made the mistake of bringing it up. Heard you caused quite a stir in town, he said, reaching for the potatoes. Mara didn't look at him. Did I? Janet Hollis was telling everyone at the diner about the new ranch hand, said she'd never seen a woman built quite like you. Tommy, Dutch warned. What? I'm just saying what she said. Mara set her fork down carefully, too carefully. And what exactly did she mean by that? Tommy's grin faltered. I don't know, just that you're, big. Tommy, shut up, Ray said. But Tommy, who'd never learned when to quit, kept going. I mean, it's not a bad thing. Some guys like... Caleb's fist hit the table hard enough to make the dishes jump. Get out! Tommy blinked. Boss, I was just out. Now. The room went dead silent. Tommy looked around for support, found none, and left with his tail between his legs. After a moment, Mara stood. I'm not hungry anymore. Mara, it's fine. She carried her plate to the kitchen, scraped it into the trash, and walked out the back door. Caleb found her an hour later in the equipment shed, attacking the ancient tiller with a wrench like it had personally wronged her. You don't have to work right now, he said. I'm not working, I'm thinking. Looks like working to me. Mara straightened, wiped her hands on her jeans. Her eyes were bright with something that might have been tears or might have been rage. You know what the worst part is? It's not even what they say. It's that they think they're being subtle, like I can't see them looking, like I don't know exactly what they're thinking. What are they thinking? That I don't belong here, that someone like me shouldn't be doing this kind of work, that there must be something wrong with you for hiring me. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. And maybe they're right. They're not. How do you know? Because I've seen you work, Caleb said. I've seen you fix things 3 men couldn't fix. I've seen you gentle a horse that was about to be put down because he was too aggressive. I've seen you do more in a month than most people do in a year. He took a step closer. So no, they're not right. They're just small-minded and scared. Scared of what? Of someone who doesn't fit in their neat little boxes. Of someone who's better than they expected. Mara looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned back to the tiller. That's supposed to make me feel better? No, Caleb admitted. But it's true. She was quiet, hands gripping the wrench tight enough to turn her knuckles white. My ex-husband used to say I embarrassed him, that he couldn't take me anywhere without people staring. He said if I just tried harder, if I just lost weight, if I just made myself smaller, then maybe he could love me properly. He was an idiot. He was honest. No. Caleb's voice came out harder than he intended. He was cruel. There's a difference. Mara's shoulders sagged. She set the wrench down, leaned against the tiller. I'm tired of being looked at like I'm something that needs fixing. Then stop looking at yourself that way. She turned to face him, eyes blazing. That easy for you? No, Caleb said. Nothing's easy. But you're not the one who's broken, Mara. They are. For a second, he thought she might cry, or yell, or walk away. Instead, she picked up the wrench and went back to work. Caleb stayed until she was done, not saying anything, just being there. When she finally put the tools away and headed for the bunkhouse, he walked beside her in the darkness. Caleb? She said as she reached the door. Yeah? Thanks for earlier, for Tommy. He had it coming. Still, thanks. She went inside and Caleb stood there for a while, looking at the closed door, trying to figure out when exactly this had stopped being about hiring help and started being about something else entirely. The next morning, Tommy apologized. Not because he wanted to, but because Dutch made him. Mara accepted it with a nod and went back to work. But something had shifted. The men watched what they said around her now, treated her less like a curiosity and more like one of them. It should have made things easier. It didn't. Because the problem wasn't the ranch, it was everywhere else. When Mara went to the hardware store, the clerk followed her around like she might steal something. When she stopped at the diner for coffee, conversations died. When she passed a group of women outside the post office, they smiled to her face and laughed the moment she was passed. She came back each time a little harder, a little more closed off. Caleb noticed. He couldn't not notice. The way her shoulders tensed when she had to go into town. The way she volunteered for jobs that kept her on the ranch. The way she'd started eating breakfast before everyone else and dinner after everyone else. Like she was trying to take up as little space as possible. It made him angry in a way he hadn't been angry in years. On a Thursday in late September, Caleb drove into town alone. He walked into the feed store where Bill Morrison had run things for 30 years and found the man behind the counter. Caleb, Bill said, surprised, usually send someone else for orders. Need to talk to you about Mara Bennett. Bill's expression closed. What about her? Heard she's been getting treated poorly. Don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Caleb leaned against the counter. And I'm telling you right now, it stops. She's working for me, which means she's got my backing. Anyone's got a problem with her, they can take it up with me directly. Bill's jaw worked. People are just concerned. Woman like that working a ranch, it's unusual. So? So people talk. Let them talk, Caleb said. But if anyone treats her with anything less than respect in this store or anywhere else in this town, they'll answer to me. We clear? Bill looked like he wanted to argue, but Caleb had money and influence and Bill had a business to run. Clear, he muttered. Caleb made the same speech at the hardware store, the diner, and the gas station. By evening, the whole town knew. He didn't care. Let them know. Let them understand that Mara wasn't alone. When he got back to the ranch, Mara was in the barn, brushing down one of the horses. She looked up as he came in. Heard you took a trip to town, she said. Word travels fast. Always does. She went back to brushing. You didn't have to do that. Yeah, I did. Why? Caleb leaned against the stall door. Because you work for me. Because you've earned better. Because... He trailed off, not sure how to finish. Because what? Because I don't like seeing you hurt. The brush stopped moving. Mara stood very still, her back to him. This thing we're doing, she said quietly, this friendship, or whatever it is, it's going to make things harder for both of us. I know. People are going to talk more, not less. Let them. They'll say you're sleeping with me. That's why you hired me. Are they wrong? The words came out before Caleb could stop them. Mara turned around slowly. Her face was unreadable. About which part? Caleb's heart was hammering. About me wanting to. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled tight. You don't want me, Mara said finally. You want to not be alone. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. She set the brush down. I'm not her, Caleb. I'm not Sarah. I can't fix whatever broke when she died. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? Caleb didn't have an answer. Or maybe he had too many answers and none of them made sense. He wanted to cross the space between them, wanted to touch her, hold her, prove that this was real and not just loneliness disguised as something else. But his feet wouldn't move. Forget it, he said finally. I shouldn't have said anything. He turned to leave. Mara's voice stopped him. I think about it too. Caleb froze. I think about it, Mara repeated. And then I remember what happened last time I let myself want something. Let myself believe I could have something good. Her voice cracked. And I can't do that again. I can't want something just to watch it die. Caleb turned back. She was crying now, silent tears tracking down her face. So yeah, she said, you're right. We should forget it. She walked past him, out of the barn, into the night. And Caleb stood there in the empty stall, surrounded by the smell of hay and horses, feeling like he'd just lost something he'd never actually had. October came in cold. The first frost hit the grass, turning everything silver in the mornings. The work shifted to preparing for winter, checking fences, moving cattle to lower pastures, stocking feed and supplies. Mara threw herself into it with the same fierce intensity she brought to everything. She worked until her hands were raw, until exhaustion made her stumble, until there was nothing left in her tank. Caleb watched and said nothing. What could he say? They'd drawn their lines, made their boundaries clear. It was better this way, safer. Except it didn't feel better. It felt like slowly suffocating. They were careful around each other now, polite, professional. They didn't sit on the fence at night anymore. Didn't talk about anything deeper than work schedules and weather forecasts. The wall that had started to crack was being rebuilt, brick by careful brick. And then Marcus Calloway showed up. He arrived on a Tuesday morning in a black SUV that cost more than most people made in a year. Dutch saw him first, came to find Caleb in the office. Boss, there's a man here asking for Mara. Caleb looked up from the books. What kind of man? The expensive kind. They walked outside together. The man standing next to the SUV was in his 50s, silver hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that screamed money and power. He had the kind of face that was used to getting what it wanted. Mara was walking across the yard, stopped dead when she saw him. The color drained from her face. Hello, Mara, the man said. His voice was smooth, cultured. It's been a while. Mara didn't move, didn't speak. Caleb stepped forward. I'm Caleb Ryland. I own this ranch. You are? Marcus Calloway. The man extended a hand. Caleb didn't take it. I'm here for Mara. We have some unfinished business. I don't have business with you, Mara said. Her voice shook. Your debt says otherwise. I don't owe you anything. Marcus smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. The papers say you do. $50,000 plus interest. That was our agreement. Caleb looked at Mara. What's he talking about? It's nothing, Mara said quickly. It's handled. Doesn't sound handled, Marcus said. Sounds like you ran away instead of paying what you owe. It's called fraud, Mara. That comes with consequences. You can't do this, Mara said. I can. And I am. Marcus pulled a folder from his car, held it out. You have two options. Come back with me and work off the debt, or I press charges and let the legal system sort it out. Either way, you're leaving here today. She's not going anywhere, Caleb said. Marcus looked at him for the first time, really looked, assessing. With all due respect, Mr. Ryland, this doesn't concern you. She works for me. That makes it my concern. Your employee signed a contract with me 3 years ago. Took a loan to pay for her daughter's medical bills. Never paid it back. Caleb's stomach dropped. He looked at Mara. Is that true? Mara's eyes were on the ground. He said it was a grant. Help for families in crisis. I didn't know it was a loan until later, and by then you'd already spent the money, Marcus finished. Signed the papers. Agreed to the terms. The terms were slavery, Mara shot back, finally looking up. You wanted me to work for you for 5 years, no pay, just room and board. You said it was the only way to clear the debt. That's not a loan, Caleb said slowly. That's exploitation. That's business, Marcus corrected, and she agreed. Under duress while her daughter was dying. The law doesn't care about duress, it cares about contracts. Marcus tucked the folder under his arm. Mara, you're coming with me, now, or I make a phone call and have the sheriff here within the hour. Mara looked at Caleb. There was so much in that look. Fear, shame, desperation, and underneath it all, a terrible resignation. Don't, Caleb said quietly. I have to. You don't. We'll fight this. With what? You don't know him. You don't know what he's capable of. Mara's hands were shaking. It's better if I just go, clean, no mess. The hell it is. Marcus checked his watch. You have 5 minutes to get your things. Mara turned toward the bunkhouse. Caleb grabbed her arm. Please, she whispered, don't make this harder. I can help you. You can't. She pulled free. Nobody can. She walked to the bunkhouse and came back 3 minutes later with her duffel bag, the same one she'd arrived with. Everything she owned in the world fit in that bag. The men had gathered now, Dutch, Tommy, Ray, standing at a distance but watching, understanding that something wrong was happening but not knowing what to do about it. Mara threw the bag in the SUV's trunk. She didn't look at anyone as she reached for the door handle. Mara, Caleb said. She stopped but didn't turn around. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Her voice was flat, empty. It was over a long time ago. I was just too stubborn to see it. She got in the car. Marcus smiled, a satisfied predator's smile, and got in the driver's seat. The SUV pulled away, kicking up dust. Caleb stood in the yard and watched it disappear down the driveway, taking with it the first person in 5 years who'd made him feel something other than numb. Dutch came up beside him. Boss? Get me everything you can find on Marcus Calloway, Caleb said. I want to know where he lives, where he works, every business he owns, every skeleton in his closet. You're going after her. Damn right I am. You sure that's smart? Caleb turned to look at him. Do I look like I care about smart right now? Dutch held up his hands. Just checking. Caleb went into the house, into his office, and sat at the desk. The contract Mara had signed was still in the drawer. He pulled it out, looked at her signature. He told her the fortress thing was true, that he'd built walls to keep the pain out, but maybe walls weren't just for keeping things out. Maybe they were for keeping things in. for protecting what mattered. And Mara mattered. He didn't know when it had happened, didn't know if it was the first day she'd shown up asking for work, or the night on the fence, or one of the 1,000 moments in between, but somewhere along the way she'd gotten past his defenses, had made him remember what it felt like to care about someone other than himself. And he wasn't letting her go without a fight. Dutch came back with information 3 hours later. Caleb was still in the office, phone pressed to his ear, talking to a lawyer he'd found in Billings, who specialized in contract disputes. Marcus Calloway, Dutch said, dropping a folder on the desk, runs a company called Calloway Solutions out of Denver. On paper, it's a financial services firm. In reality, it's a loan shark operation dressed up in a suit. He targets people in crisis, medical debt, foreclosure, bankruptcy, offers them money they can't get anywhere else, then buries them in terms they don't understand until they're locked in. Caleb put the lawyer on hold. How many people? Records show at least 40 over the past 10 years, mostly women, some men, all desperate. Dutch tapped the folder. There's more. 3 of them filed lawsuits. One withdrew the complaint after her house mysteriously burned down. Another disappeared before the court date. The third settled out of court with an NDA. He's threatening them. Looks that way. Can't prove it, but the pattern's there. Caleb picked up the phone again. You get all that? He asked the lawyer. The voice on the other end was cautious. I did. Mr. Ryland, if what you're saying is true, this is bigger than a simple contract dispute. This is organized fraud, possibly racketeering. Can we use it? Maybe, but it'll take time. Months, possibly years. These cases are complicated. We don't have years. Caleb's hand tightened on the phone. We might not have weeks. Then you need law enforcement, FBI, if the operation crosses state lines. And how long does that take? Longer than you want to hear. Caleb hung up. He looked at Dutch, who was watching him with the expression of a man who'd seen his boss make bad decisions before and was preparing to watch him make another one. Don't say it, Caleb warned. Wasn't going to. Yes, you were, Dutch sighed. Fine. You're about to do something stupid, something that might get you arrested or killed or both. And I'm going to tell you it's a bad idea and you're going to ignore me, and we're going to do it anyway. Not we. Me. Like hell. Dutch crossed his arms. That woman worked here for 2 months. In that time, she fixed more things than the 3 of us combined fixed in a year. She didn't complain, didn't slack off, didn't ask for special treatment, and she made you, he gestured vaguely, less of a miserable bastard. So yeah, we're doing this. Where are we going? Caleb looked at the folder at the address printed on Marcus Calloway's business registration. Denver. When? Now. They took Caleb's truck, the big Ford he used for hauling. Dutch drove while Caleb made calls. More lawyers, a private investigator, a friend from college who worked in journalism and might be interested in a story about predatory lending. He left messages, sent emails, built a paper trail. If this went wrong, he wanted people to know where he'd gone and why. The drive to Denver took 8 hours. They didn't talk much. Dutch kept the radio on low, country songs bleeding into one another. Caleb watched the landscape change from Montana grassland to Wyoming plains to Colorado mountains, his mind running through scenarios. What if Mara didn't want to be rescued? What if she'd accepted her fate and he was just making things worse? What if Marcus had lawyers and security, and Caleb ended up in a cell for trespassing or assault or any number of charges a rich man could dream up? What if he was too late? He pushed the thoughts down, focused on what he could control. One step at a time. They reached Denver after dark. The city rose up out of the plains like something from another world, all glass and steel and lights. Caleb had been here once, years ago, with Sarah. They'd hated it. Too loud, too crowded, too far from anything real. The address Dutch had found led them to a high-rise in the business district. Sleek, modern, expensive. The kind of place where security guards wore suits and looked at you like they could smell how much money you had. Caleb parked across the street. Now what? Now we wait, Dutch said, and we watch. They waited. An hour passed, 2. People came and went from the building, businessmen, secretaries, delivery drivers. No sign of Marcus. No sign of Mara. At 11 o'clock, the lobby lights dimmed. The building settled into night mode. "He's not here," Caleb said. "Probably lives somewhere else. This is just the office." So we find out where he lives. And then what? Break down his door? Caleb didn't answer, because that's exactly what he wanted to do. Wanted to tear through that building, through Marcus Calloway's life, until he found Mara and got her out. Dutch's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, frowned. "It's Ray. Says the sheriff stopped by the ranch, asking questions about Mara." Caleb's stomach dropped. What kind of questions? Whether she worked there, how long, if you knew about her legal troubles. Dutch read the message. Ray played dumb, told him Mara was just seasonal help and you didn't know anything about her past. Marcus is making his move, probably filed a complaint, got law enforcement involved, which means we're running out of time. Caleb looked at the building, at the dark windows that revealed nothing. Somewhere in this city, Mara was trapped, scared, maybe hurt, and he was sitting in a truck playing detective. He made a decision. "I'm going in," he said, reaching for the door handle. Dutch grabbed his arm. "That's the stupid thing I was talking about earlier. I know. You'll get arrested. Probably. And that helps Mara how?" Caleb stopped. Dutch was right. Breaking into a building, getting hauled off by security, that didn't help anyone. He needed to be smarter, needed to think. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Ryland," Marcus Calloway's voice smooth as oil. "I thought you might try something like this." Caleb's blood went cold. "Where is she?" "Safe, comfortable, working off her debt as agreed." "Let me talk to her." "I'm afraid that's not possible. She's quite busy." "If you hurt her—" "I have no intention of hurting her," Marcus interrupted. "Why would I? She's valuable to me. Unlike you, I recognize talent when I see it. Mara's skills are worth far more than $50,000. In fact, I'm considering extending her contract. You can't do that. I can do whatever the contract allows. And the contract is quite flexible." Marcus paused. "But I'm a reasonable man. I'm willing to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "You forget about Mara. Stop making calls, stop digging into my business, stop playing hero. In return, I'll reduce her debt. She'll be free in 3 years instead of 5. "That's not a deal. That's extortion." "That's reality, Mr. Ryland. You're a rancher from Montana. I'm a businessman with resources you can't imagine. You can't win this fight, but you can make it easier on her. 3 years and she walks away clean. Or you keep pushing, and I make sure she never leaves. Your choice." The line went dead. Caleb sat there, phone still pressed to his ear, rage building in his chest like a wildfire. "What'd he say?" Dutch asked. "He wants me to back off." "And?" "And I'm not backing off." Dutch nodded slowly. "Didn't think so. So what's the plan?" Caleb thought. Marcus expected him to either give up or do something reckless. Expected him to be a cowboy, charging in without thinking. But Caleb had run a ranch for 15 years, had dealt with droughts and disasters and 100 other crises that couldn't be solved with force. He knew how to be patient, how to wait for the right moment, and he knew how to find weaknesses. "We need to talk to the others," Caleb said. "The people he did this to before. If we can get them to go on record, build a pattern of fraud and coercion—" "They won't talk," Dutch said. "You read the file. They're scared." "Then we make them less scared. Show them they're not alone." Caleb pulled out his phone, started scrolling through the information Dutch had compiled. There. Jennifer Ortega. Filed a lawsuit 4 years ago, withdrew it 2 months later, lives in Boulder. It's almost midnight, so we'll wait until morning. Caleb looked at Dutch. "You don't have to be here for this. You've got a wife back home, kids. Kids are grown and Helen knows where I am." Dutch settled back in his seat. "Besides, someone needs to keep you from getting yourself killed." They found a motel, got 3 hours of sleep, and were on the road to Boulder by 6 in the morning. Jennifer Ortega's address led them to a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Flowers in the yard. A bike on the porch. Normal life hiding old scars. Caleb knocked. Waited. Knocked again. The door opened a crack. A woman in her 40s peered out, eyes wary. "Whatever you're selling, I'm not interested." "I'm not selling anything," Caleb said. "My name is Caleb Ryland. I'm here about Marcus Calloway. The wariness turned to fear. I don't know who that is. Yes, you do. You filed a lawsuit against him, against Callaway Solutions. That was a mistake, a misunderstanding. It wasn't. Caleb held up a hand as she started to close the door. Please, just hear me out. Someone I care about is in the same situation you were in. He's got her locked into a contract she can't escape. I'm trying to help her, but I need proof that this is a pattern, that he's done this before. Jennifer's hand trembled on the door. I can't help you. You can. You're the only one who can. You don't understand. She stopped, glanced over her shoulder like someone might be listening. He'll destroy me, my family, everything. Not if we stop him first. You can't stop him. Nobody can. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I tried. I had a lawyer, evidence, everything, and then my house caught fire. The investigator said it was electrical, but I know it wasn't. 2 weeks later, my daughter's school records were hacked. Her social security number was used to open credit cards. My lawyer suddenly couldn't take my case anymore, said there were conflicts of interest. She looked at Caleb with eyes that had seen too much. That's what happens when you fight Marcus Callaway. He doesn't just beat you, he breaks you. What if you weren't fighting alone? Caleb asked. What if there were others? A dozen people willing to testify? There aren't. How do you know? Because I tried to find them. After my lawyer quit, I reached out to the other names I could find. People who'd filed complaints or lawsuits. Half of them had moved, left no forwarding address. The other half wouldn't talk to me. One told me to forget I ever knew his name. Jennifer's hand tightened on the door. These aren't people looking for justice, Mr. Ryland. These are people who just want to survive. And what about the person he's got right now? Does she deserve to survive? Jennifer flinched. That's not fair. No, it's not. None of this is fair, but it's real, and it's happening. And if we don't do something, it's going to keep happening. For a long moment, Jennifer just stared at him. Then she opened the door wider. Come in, but I'm not promising anything. Inside, the house was small but tidy. Photos on the walls, a daughter graduating, a family vacation, normal moments from a life that had been turned upside down. Jennifer made coffee with shaking hands. Her name is Mara, Caleb said when they were sitting at the kitchen table. She took a loan from Callaway to pay for her daughter's medical bills. Her daughter died anyway, and now Marcus is using that grief, that debt, to trap her. Jennifer's eyes were wet. The terms? 5 years of unpaid labor. He's calling it working off the debt. That's what he told me too. Except my debt kept growing. Fees, interest, penalties for things I didn't even know I was supposed to do. By the end of the first year, I owed more than when I started. How'd you get out? I didn't. My brother paid him, took out a second mortgage on his house, gave Marcus $75,000 to clear my debt and make the lawsuit go away. She wiped her eyes. My brother and I don't speak anymore. He says I ruined his life. Dutch, who'd been quiet until now, set his coffee down hard. This man needs to be in prison. I agree, Jennifer said. But wanting something and making it happen are two different things. Caleb leaned forward. What if we could prove fraud? Prove that the contracts are illegal, that he's using coercion and threats? You'd need documentation, records, people willing to testify in court under oath. Jennifer shook her head. And you'd need protection, because the moment you start making noise, Marcus will come after you. I can handle Marcus. Can you handle losing everything? Your ranch, your reputation, maybe your freedom? Jennifer looked at him hard. Because that's what he'll take. That's what he does. Caleb thought about the ranch, the land his grandfather had homesteaded, that his father had expanded, that he'd poured his life into. Thought about what it would mean to risk all of that. Then he thought about Mara sitting on the fence in the moonlight. Thought about her smile when she got the combine running. Thought about the way she'd looked at him in the barn, like he was someone who could still be good despite everything. Yeah, he said. I can handle it. Jennifer studied him for a long time. Then she stood, went to a closet, and came back with a cardboard box. I kept copies of everything. Every contract, every email, every threatening letter his lawyer sent. I told myself it was for insurance. Really, I think I just couldn't let go of the idea that someday Someone would hold him accountable. She pushed the box across the table. This is everything I have. If you can use it, take it. But Mr. Ryland, if you do this, if you really go after him, you need to be prepared to finish it. Because if you start and fail, whoever's helping you will pay the price. I'll finish it, Caleb said. They left Boulder with the box and 3 names Jennifer had reluctantly given them. Other victims who might be willing to talk. Might being the critical word. The first name lived in Wyoming, wouldn't open the door. The second lived in Montana, agreed to meet them, then called an hour later and canceled, voice shaking. The third had changed their number. They drove back to Denver as the sun set, no closer to building a case than when they'd started. This isn't working, Dutch said. Even if we found a dozen people willing to talk, Marcus has lawyers who will bury this in paperwork for years. And Mara doesn't have years. I know. So what are we doing? Caleb didn't answer. He was thinking about what Jennifer had said, about how Marcus didn't just beat people. He broke them, took everything they had until there was nothing left to fight with. But that worked both ways. If Marcus had secrets, vulnerabilities, things he didn't want exposed, if Caleb could find those things and use them. His phone rang. Unknown number again. He answered. Mr. Ryland. Not Marcus this time. A woman's voice, soft and scared. You don't know me, but I know Mara Bennett. I work for Marcus Calloway. Caleb's heart jumped. Where is she? Is she okay? She's not hurt, not physically, but you need to stop what you're doing, stop investigating, stop making calls. Marcus knows everything you're doing. He's watching you. Let me talk to her. I can't, but I can tell you this. If you keep pushing, he's going to press charges. He's already talked to a judge, filed preliminary paperwork. He's going to accuse her of theft, fraud, breach of contract. Even if the charges don't stick, the process will destroy her. Why are you telling me this? The woman was quiet for a moment. Because I've seen what he does to people. And Mara doesn't deserve it. She's good. She works hard, doesn't cause trouble, doesn't complain, but Marcus won't let her go. He likes having power over people, likes watching them squirm. Then help me get her out. I can't. I have a family, kids. If Marcus finds out I talked to you, he won't, I swear. He always finds out. Her voice broke. I'm sorry. I just wanted you to know what you're up against. If you're smart, you'll walk away. I'm not walking away. Then you're going to lose. She hung up. Caleb stared at the phone. Dutch glanced over. Let me guess. Another warning. Yeah. How many does that make? Lost count. Dutch was quiet for a mile. Then he said, You know, when I first started working for you, you barely spoke. Spent all your time alone, working yourself half to death. I figured you'd eventually drink yourself into the ground or sell the ranch or just fade away. He turned to look at Caleb. But then Mara showed up, and for the first time in 5 years you looked alive. Like maybe there was a reason to keep going. Your point? My point is, whatever you're planning to do next, and I know you're planning something because you get this look when you're about to do something reckless, I'm with you, all the way. Because that woman deserves someone fighting for her, and you deserve a chance to be the man you used to be. Caleb's throat tightened. Thanks. Don't thank me yet. We might both end up in jail. They reached Denver as night fell. Caleb drove past the high-rise, past the address Jennifer had given them for Marcus's house, mapping the city in his mind. Then he made a decision. Take me to the nearest courthouse, he said. What are we doing at a courthouse? Filing a lawsuit. Dutch's eyebrows shot up. Against Calloway? Against his company, for fraud, illegal contract terms, and coercion. Caleb's hands tightened on the wheel. Marcus thinks he can scare me off with threats and legal games, but 2 can play that game. We file suit, make it public, force him to defend himself in court. Even if we don't win, it puts pressure on him, makes him visible. You need a lawyer for that. I've got one. Guy in Billings. He said it would take time, but if we move fast, it's 9 o'clock at night. Then we do it first thing tomorrow. Caleb pulled into a parking garage. Tonight, we find out where Marcus is keeping Mara. They spent the next 3 hours driving around Denver, checking addresses associated with Callaway Solutions. Most were commercial properties, office buildings, warehouses, storage facilities. But there was one residential address listed under the company name, a house in an expensive neighborhood west of the city. They drove past it twice. Big house, modern design, surrounded by walls and a security gate, lights on inside. 2 cars in the driveway, including the black SUV Marcus had been driving. "She could be in there," Dutch said. "Or she could be anywhere." Caleb stared at the house, frustration building. "We need eyes inside." "How?" Caleb didn't answer. He was thinking, planning, trying to figure out how to get to Mara without making things worse. His phone rang a third time. He answered without checking the number. "Caleb," Mara's voice, barely a whisper. "Caleb, are you there?" His heart stopped. "Mara, where are you? Are you okay?" "I don't have much time. He took my phone, but I found an old one in a drawer." "Caleb, you have to stop. Whatever you're doing, you have to stop. I'm not stopping until you're out of there. You don't understand. He's going to—" Her voice cut off. Sounds in the background. A door opening. Mara's breath hitching in fear. Then Marcus's voice, distant but clear. "I thought I made myself clear about phone calls." The line went dead. Caleb sat there, phone pressed to his ear, listening to silence. Then he opened the truck door and started walking toward the house. Dutch caught up with him halfway across the street. "What are you doing?" "Getting her out." "You can't just watch me." Caleb reached the security gate and pressed the intercom button. Once, twice, 3 times until someone answered. "Can I help you?" A voice he didn't recognize. "Tell Marcus Callaway that Caleb Ryland wants to make a deal." A pause. "Mr. Callaway isn't taking visitors." "He'll take this one. Tell him I'll drop the lawsuit, stop investigating, walk away completely. All he has to do is let Mara go." Another pause, longer this time. Then the gate buzzed open. Dutch grabbed his arm. "This is a trap." "I know." "And you're walking into it anyway. You got a better idea?" Dutch didn't. They walked through the gate together, up the curved driveway to the front door. It opened before they could knock. Marcus Callaway stood there in expensive casual clothes, slacks and a button-down that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He smiled. "Mr. Ryland, I was wondering when you'd do something this stupid." He stepped aside. "Please, come in." The inside of Marcus Callaway's house looked exactly like Caleb expected. All sharp edges and expensive furniture, the kind of place designed to intimidate. Abstract art on the walls. Marble floors that echoed with each footstep. Everything cold and calculated. Marcus led them into a sitting room where a man in a dark suit stood by the window. Security, probably. Maybe a lawyer. He didn't introduce himself. "Please sit," Marcus said, gesturing to a leather sofa. Caleb stayed standing. "Where's Mara?" "Upstairs, resting. She's had a long day." Marcus poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter. "Can I offer you something? Whiskey? Water?" "I want to see her." "In time." Marcus took a sip, savoring it. "First, let's discuss this deal you mentioned. You'll drop your lawsuit?" "If you let her go. Free and clear. No debt, no conditions." Marcus laughed. It was a sound without warmth. "Mr. Ryland, you drove 8 hours to offer me something I can already take. The lawsuit you filed, or rather, the lawsuit your lawyer filed this afternoon, won't survive the first motion to dismiss. My attorneys are already preparing the paperwork." Caleb felt his stomach drop, but kept his face neutral. "Then why are you talking to me?" "Because I'm curious. You're a wealthy man by Montana standards. You could write a check for $50,000 without blinking, yet you haven't offered to pay Mara's debt. Why is that?" "Because it's not a real debt." "The contract says otherwise." "The contract's illegal. Predatory lending, unconscionable terms, exploitation of someone in crisis. Any judge will see through it." "Perhaps." Marcus set his glass down. "Or perhaps a judge will see a woman who took money she couldn't repay and a businessman trying to recoup his losses. Perspective matters, Mr. Ryland, and I have very good lawyers who know how to shape perspective." "So do I." "Do you?" Marcus smiled. "Because from where I'm standing, you have a small-town attorney who's never handled a case like this, a bunch of hearsay from people too scared to testify, and absolutely no leverage. What you have is passion, which is admirable, truly. But passion doesn't win court cases. Money does. And I have considerably more of that than you. Dutch shifted beside Caleb, fists clenched. Caleb put a hand on his arm. Then what do you want? Caleb asked. I want you to understand the situation. Mara Bennett owes me money. She signed a contract agreeing to work off that debt. That's not slavery. That's not exploitation. That's commerce. If she'd wanted different terms, she should have read the fine print. She was grieving. Her daughter had just died. And I sympathize with that. I truly do. But sympathy doesn't pay bills. Marcus picked up a folder from the side table, held it out. These are the charges I can file against Mara if I choose. Theft by deception, breach of contract, fraud. With my resources and her history, she'd be looking at 3 to 5 years in prison. Is that what you want for her? Caleb's hands shook. He wanted to cross the room, put his fist through Marcus's face, wipe that smug expression away. But that's what Marcus wanted. Wanted him to lose control, do something stupid that would give him even more leverage. What do you want? Caleb asked again, forcing his voice steady. Marcus considered him for a long moment. I'll make you a counteroffer. You pay me $100,000, double the original debt, and Mara goes free. Clean slate. No charges, no lawsuit, no further obligation. That's extortion. That's business. You want her? Pay for her. The words hung in the air like poison. Caleb felt something crack inside him. Not anger, something deeper. The realization that Marcus saw Mara as property, as a commodity to be traded. Let me see her first, Caleb said. Marcus shrugged. As you wish. He nodded to the man by the window. Bring her down. The security guard left. Caleb waited, every muscle tense. Dutch stood beside him, equally coiled. Footsteps on the stairs. Then Mara appeared in the doorway. She looked exhausted, hair pulled back, face pale, wearing the same clothes she'd left in. But when her eyes met Caleb's, something flickered there. Relief, fear, hope, all tangled together. Caleb, she breathed, you shouldn't be here. He crossed the room before anyone could stop him, pulled her into his arms. She stiffened for a second, then melted against him, hands gripping his shirt, like she might fall without it. I'm getting you out, he said quietly. You can't afford what he wants. I don't care what it costs. Mara pulled back, looked up at him with wet eyes. Yes, you do. You care about the ranch, your home, everything you've built. Don't throw that away for me. It's just money. It's your life. And you're mine. The words came out before he could stop them, raw and honest and terrifying. Mara stared at him, mouth slightly open. Marcus cleared his throat. How touching. Mr. Ryland, do we have a deal? Caleb didn't look away from Mara. If I pay you, she's free? Completely free? You have my word. Your word means nothing. Then you have it in writing. My lawyer will draft the agreement tonight. You wire the money tomorrow, Mara walks out that door, and we never speak again. Caleb finally turned to face him. I want the original contract, every copy, and a signed statement that the debt is satisfied in full. Done. And I want an apology. Marcus's smile faltered. Excuse me? You heard me. You apologized to her. For taking advantage of her grief, for trapping her, for treating her like she's nothing. Mr. Ryland, that's the deal. $100,000 and an apology. Otherwise, I walk out of here, file criminal charges, and spend every penny I have making sure your name is destroyed. I might lose. Probably will. But I'll make enough noise that people start asking questions. Your other victims might get brave. The press might get interested. Is your reputation worth that risk? Marcus's jaw tightened. The room went silent except for the ticking of an expensive clock on the mantel. Finally, Marcus turned to Mara. His voice was flat, mechanical. I apologize for any distress this situation has caused you. Not good enough, Caleb said. That's all you're getting. Then we're done here. Caleb took Mara's hand, started toward the door. Wait. Marcus's voice was sharp. Fine. Ms. Bennett, I apologize for exploiting your circumstances and treating you unfairly. Is that sufficient? Mara looked at Caleb, then at Marcus. Yes, she said quietly. Marcus nodded to his lawyer. Draft the papers. Mr. Ryland, I'll expect the wire transfer by noon tomorrow. Until then, Mara stays here. No, Caleb said. That's not negotiable. Everything's negotiable. She comes with me tonight, or there's no deal. And how do I know you'll actually pay? Because unlike you, when I give my word, it means something. Caleb pulled out his phone, opened his banking app, showed Marcus the screen. I've got the money. I'll transfer it right now if you want. But she leaves with me. Tonight. Marcus studied the screen, then Caleb's face, looking for weakness, for a crack in the armor. He didn't find one. Fine, Marcus said finally. She goes with you. But if that money isn't in my account by noon tomorrow, I press charges, and I'll make sure she's arrested before you can blink. It'll be there. Marcus gestured to the door. Then get out of my house. Caleb didn't need to be told twice. He kept hold of Mara's hand as they walked out, Dutch close behind. They didn't speak until they were through the gate, down the street, back in the truck. Then Mara started crying. Not quiet tears. Full body-shaking sobs that she'd clearly been holding back for days. Caleb pulled her close, let her cry against his chest while Dutch drove them away from that house and everything it represented. I'm sorry, Mara kept saying. I'm so sorry. You have nothing to be sorry for. I do. You just spent $100,000 on me, on my mistake. It's not your mistake, it's his, and it's worth every penny if it means you're safe. Mara pulled back, wiped her eyes with shaking hands. How? How are you going to come up with that kind of money by tomorrow? Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm selling the North Pasture. Dutch's head snapped around. Boss? It's done. I talked to a developer last year, guy who wanted to build houses. Offered me $250 for it. I'll call him first thing, tell him I'll take $120 if he can wire it by morning. That's 1,000 acres, Mara said. That's part of your ranch. It's land. Just land. It's your heritage. Your grandfather's... It's dirt and grass, Caleb interrupted. You're a person. You matter more. Mara stared at him, tears streaming down her face. You barely know me. I know enough. They drove through the night in silence after that, stopping only for gas. Caleb made his calls from a truck stop in Wyoming, the developer, who sounded delighted and promised to have his lawyer draw up papers immediately. His own lawyer, who thought he was insane but agreed to handle the transfer. His accountant, who asked 3 times if he was sure. By sunrise, they were crossing back into Montana. Mara had fallen asleep in the passenger seat, head against the window. Caleb watched her breathe, watched the tension slowly leave her face as miles stretched between her and Denver. You really going through with this? Dutch asked quietly. Yeah. That's prime land. My father's dead. So's my grandfather. It's my decision. And when you regret it? I won't. Dutch didn't argue, just drove. They reached the ranch by mid-morning. Tommy and Ray were waiting on the porch, relief washing over their faces when Mara stepped out of the truck. Welcome back, Ray said simply. Mara's voice was hoarse from crying. Thanks. Inside, Caleb's phone was already ringing, the developer, confirming the wire transfer. By noon, $120,000 had hit Caleb's account. By 12:15, $100,000 of it was gone, sent to an account number Marcus had provided. At 12:30, a PDF arrived in Caleb's email. The contract, stamped debt satisfied in full. Marcus's signature at the bottom. Caleb printed it, handed it to Mara. She stared at the paper like she couldn't believe it was real. I'm free? You're free. She sat down hard in a kitchen chair, the paper clutched in both hands. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Caleb, really, don't. He poured her a glass of water, set it in front of her. You've been through hell. Just breathe. Everything else can wait. But everything else couldn't wait, because the town had heard about Denver, about the money, about Caleb Ryland selling prime ranch land for a woman who'd worked there barely 3 months. The whispers started immediately. At the feed store, heard Caleb's lost his mind over that Bennett woman. At the diner, $100,000? For her? He must be sleeping with her. At the gas station. Poor bastard. First Sarah, now this. Some men just can't think straight around a woman. Caleb heard the talk, ignored it, but Mara couldn't. 3 days after they got back, she walked into Caleb's office. I'm leaving. He looked up from the books he'd been avoiding. What? I can't stay here. Not after what you did, not with everyone talking. Let them talk. It's not that simple. They're saying... She stopped, swallowed hard. They're saying you bought me. Like I'm some kind of prostitute you paid for. Caleb stood. Anyone says that to your face, you send them to me. And what are you going to do? Fight the whole town? If I have to. That's not a solution. That's just making things worse. Mara wrapped her arms around herself. I appreciate what you did. More than you'll ever know, but I can't be the reason you lose everything. Your reputation, your standing in this community. I don't care about any of that. Well, I do, her voice cracked. Because when I'm gone, you'll still be here. You'll still have to live with these people, do business with them, and they'll never let you forget that you threw away your family's land for the fat woman who worked here for a summer. Stop, Caleb said quietly. Stop what? Stop talking about yourself like that. Like your size is the only thing that matters. Like it defines you. It does to them. Then they're idiots, and their opinion doesn't mean a damn thing to me. Mara looked at him with tired eyes. But it should. You live here. You have to... I don't have to do anything except what I think is right. And letting you walk away because a bunch of small-minded people can't see what I see? That's not right. That's cowardice. I'm not asking you to be a coward. I'm asking you to be smart. Smart would have been staying in Montana and letting Marcus keep you. Smart would have been writing him a check and never looking back. Smart would have been protecting myself instead of giving a damn about someone else for the first time in 5 years. Caleb crossed the room, stopped in front of her. But I didn't do smart. I did what mattered, and you matter, Mara. More than land, more than money, more than what anyone in this town thinks. Tears spilled down Mara's cheeks. Why? Why what? Why do you care so much? We barely know each other. You said it yourself. I've been here 3 months. 3 months isn't enough time to... She gestured helplessly between them. To whatever this is. Caleb thought about lying, about deflecting, about building the walls back up and keeping himself safe. Instead, he told the truth. Because when Sarah died, I died with her. Went through the motions, kept the ranch running, but I wasn't really living, just existing. And then you showed up asking for work, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt something, felt alive. Felt like maybe there was a reason to keep going besides just going. He took a breath. You didn't ask me for anything, didn't want anything from me. You just wanted a chance to prove yourself. And that honesty, that strength, it reminded me who I used to be, who I could still be. I'm not strong, Mara whispered. I ran from Marcus instead of fighting. I let my husband destroy me. I couldn't even save my own daughter. You're the strongest person I know. Caleb's voice was firm. You lost everything and kept going. Worked jobs no one else wanted, lived in your truck when you had to, never gave up even when you had every reason to. That's not weakness, Mara. That's survival. That's courage. She was crying harder now, hands covering her face. Caleb pulled her close, let her soak his shirt with tears while he held her. I don't want to hurt you, she said against his chest. You won't. You don't know that. No, he admitted. I don't, but I'm willing to find out. Question is, are you? Mara pulled back, looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. What if it doesn't work? What if we try this and it falls apart? Then it falls apart. But at least we tried. And the town? The town can think whatever it wants. I'm done living my life based on other people's opinions. He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Stay, please. Not because you owe me. Not because you feel guilty. But because you want to. Because maybe, just maybe, this could be something good. Mara was quiet for a long time. Then, so quietly he almost didn't hear it, she said, Okay. Okay? I'll stay. But Caleb, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you won't regret this. Won't wake up 6 months from now and wish you'd made a different choice. I promise. How can you be sure? Caleb smiled, a real smile, maybe the first in years. Because I've spent 5 years regretting the choices I didn't make, the chances I didn't take. I'm done with regret. From now on, I'm choosing what I want. And I want you. Mara's breath hitched. Then she kissed him. It wasn't smooth or perfect or any of the things movies made kisses out to be. It was messy and desperate and tasted like salt from her tears. But it was real. And it was theirs. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Mara laughed. A surprised, slightly hysterical sound. What? Caleb asked. I never thought. She shook her head. This is crazy. Yeah. We're probably going to screw it up. Probably. And the town's going to make our lives hell. Without a doubt. Mara grinned despite the tears still on her face. Okay then. Okay then, Caleb agreed. The town did make their lives hell, at least at first. People stared when they went places together, whispered when they thought Caleb couldn't hear. Some of his business relationships got frosty. The invitations to community events dried up. Caleb didn't care. And slowly, surprisingly, Mara stopped caring too. They worked the ranch together, ate meals together, sat on the fence at night talking about everything and nothing. Dutch watched them with the expression of a man who'd witnessed a miracle and didn't quite trust it yet. 6 weeks after Denver, on a cold November evening, Caleb found Mara in the barn crying. He'd learned by now that sometimes she just needed to cry, to let the grief out. So he sat beside her and waited. It's her birthday, Mara said finally. Emma, my daughter. She would have been 8 today. I'm sorry. I keep thinking, if I'd just noticed sooner, if I'd taken her to the doctor when she first started coughing instead of waiting, if I'd... Stop! Caleb took her hand. You can't do this to yourself. I killed her. No, pneumonia killed her. Bad luck killed her. But not you. Never you. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because I know you. And I know you would have done anything to save her. Mara leaned against him, exhausted. I don't know how to move forward, how to be happy when she's not here. You don't move forward, you move through, one day at a time. Caleb wrapped an arm around her. And some days are going to be hell, like today. But other days will be okay. And eventually there'll be more okay days than hell days. That's all you can hope for. Is that what you did? With Sarah? Eventually. Took me long enough. He paused. You helped with that. Made the okay days come more often. They sat there until full dark, holding each other while the world turned cold around them. That night, Mara moved out of the bunkhouse and into the main house, into Caleb's room, into his life properly. The whispers in town got worse. Then, slowly, they started to fade. People got used to seeing them together, got bored with the scandal, found something else to talk about. On Christmas Eve, Caleb gave Mara the deed to the north pasture. She stared at the paper, confused. What is this? It's yours. The land I sold. I bought it back. Took every penny I had left plus a loan, but it's done. And it's in your name now. Caleb, I can't. Yes, you can. It's your safety net. Your insurance policy. If things ever go wrong between us, if you ever need to leave, you'll have something. You'll never be trapped again. Mara's hand shook holding the deed. This is too much. It's exactly enough. He took her hands. I love you, Mara. I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. I love you. Not because you're easy or convenient or because you fix my tractor. I love you because you're real, because you're honest. Because when I'm with you, I feel like the man I was supposed to be all along. I love you too, Mara whispered, even though I'm terrified, even though I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Things will go wrong. That's life. But we'll handle them together. Promise? Promise. They spent Christmas at the ranch with Dutch and his family, eating too much and laughing more than Caleb had laughed in years. It was simple, normal, perfect in its imperfection. On New Year's Eve, standing on the porch watching fireworks, someone was setting off in town. Mara said, I want to have a baby. Caleb almost dropped his beer. What? I know it's fast. I know we've only been together a few months, but I'm 36. I don't have forever, and I want to try again, want to be a mother again. She looked at him nervously. If that's something you'd want, no pressure. I just thought I should tell you. Caleb kissed her. Yes. Yes? Yes, I want that. With you. All of it. Mara smiled so wide it looked like it hurt. Okay then. Okay then. They tried, month after month, each negative test a small heartbreak. But they kept trying. In March, Mara missed her period. They didn't say anything, didn't want to jinx it. A week later, she took a test, positive. They stared at the little plastic stick, both too scared to believe it. We should wait, Mara said. Make sure before we tell anyone. Caleb agreed. They waited through the first trimester, breath held, afraid to hope. But the baby held on, grew, made Mara tired and nauseous and happier than he'd ever seen her. At 12 weeks, they told Dutch, he cried, which surprised everyone, including himself. The town found out shortly after, and for the first time the response wasn't judgment, it was congratulations, genuine happiness, like Mara had finally proven herself worthy by doing the one thing the town understood, carrying Caleb Ryland's child. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt hollow. Because the same people who'd whispered about her weight, her worth, her right to exist in their community, those same people were now smiling and offering baby clothes and asking about due dates. Mara smiled back, said thank you, played the part, but Caleb saw the strain in her eyes. They only accept me now because I'm pregnant, she said one night, because I'm finally serving a purpose they understand. Their acceptance doesn't matter, but it does, because our child's going to grow up here, go to school here, have to deal with these people. Then we'll teach our child not to give a damn what people think, just like we don't. Do we really not give a damn? Or are we just pretending? Caleb didn't have an answer to that. The pregnancy progressed. Mara grew bigger, belly swelling, body changing in ways that made her self-conscious despite Caleb's reassurances. Some days she was radiant. Other days she cried because she couldn't fit into her clothes and felt like a whale. Caleb loved every version of her. Told her so daily. Meant it. At 32 weeks, Mara woke up bleeding. They rushed to the hospital in Billings, Caleb driving 90 miles an hour while Mara gripped his hand so hard he lost feeling in his fingers. The emergency room. Tests. Machines. Doctors using words like placental abruption and fetal distress. We need to deliver now, the doctor said. It's too early, but if we wait, we could lose them both. Caleb's world narrowed to a single point. Do it. Whatever you have to do, save them. They wheeled Mara away. Caleb stood in the hallway, helpless, while the woman he loved and the child they'd made together disappeared behind surgical doors. Dutch arrived an hour later, breathless. Any news? Caleb shook his head. He couldn't speak, could barely breathe. They waited. Hours blurred together, coffee that tasted like ash, fluorescent lights that made everything look sickly. Finally, a doctor emerged. Mr. Ryland? Caleb stood. Are they, your wife and daughter are alive. The relief was so intense it made his knees buckle. Dutch caught his arm. The baby's premature, the doctor continued. 3 pounds, 2 ounces. She's in the NICU. The next 72 hours are critical. And Mara? She lost a lot of blood. We had to do an emergency hysterectomy, but she's stable. She's going to be okay. Caleb sat down hard. A daughter. He had a daughter. And Mara was alive. That was all that mattered. They let him see Mara first. She was pale, hooked up to machines, but her eyes were open. The baby? She whispered. She's fighting. 3 pounds. They said the next few days are important. Tears leaked from the corners of Mara's eyes. I failed again. Couldn't even carry her to term. You didn't fail. You're both alive. That's all I care about. They took my uterus. I can't have more children. I don't want more children. I want you and our daughter. That's enough. That's everything. Mara cried herself to sleep. Caleb sat beside her bed, holding her hand, and made a promise to himself. Whatever happened next, whatever battles came, he wasn't going anywhere. He was staying, fighting, choosing them over and over again. Because that's what love was. Not the easy parts, the hard parts, the moments when everything fell apart and you had to decide whether to run or stay. And Caleb Ryland was done running. The first 72 hours in the NICU were the longest of Caleb's life. He split his time between Mara's recovery room and the plastic incubator where his daughter fought for each breath. She was so small, impossibly small. Wires and tubes connected to her tiny body, machines doing the work her lungs weren't ready to do. The nurses told him to talk to her, said babies could hear, could sense their parents even through all the equipment. So Caleb sat in the uncomfortable chair beside the incubator and talked about the ranch, about the horses, about how her mother was the strongest person he'd ever met, and she came from that same strength. "You've got to fight," he whispered on the second night, watching her chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. "I know it's hard. I know you're tired, but your mom's waiting to hold you, and I need you to stay, please." The baby's hand twitched, so small it could fit in his palm. Caleb reached through the incubator's opening, let her tiny fingers wrap around one of his. Her grip was weak, but there. "That's my girl," he said, voice breaking. On the third day, Mara was strong enough to be wheeled down to the NICU. She sat in the wheelchair staring at their daughter through the plastic, tears streaming down her face. "She looks like Emma," Mara whispered. "Same nose, same chin." Caleb's throat tightened. "Yeah, she does. I can't lose another one. I can't." Mara's voice dissolved into sobs. "You won't. She's a fighter. Look at her. She's still here." But fighting didn't guarantee winning. Caleb had learned that the hard way. Sometimes you fought with everything you had and still lost. The fourth day brought complications. The baby's oxygen levels dropped. They increased the ventilator support, added medications. A doctor with kind eyes and a tired face explained that the next week was critical, that they should prepare themselves. "Prepare ourselves for what?" Mara asked. The doctor didn't answer directly. Didn't have to. Caleb held Mara while she cried. Then he dried his own eyes and went back to the incubator. Back to talking to his daughter, willing her to live through sheer force of wanting. Dutch came on the fifth day, bringing clean clothes and food Caleb didn't eat. "How is she?" "Holding on? Barely." "And Mara?" "Same." Dutch sat with him for a while, both men staring at the tiny baby surrounded by machines. "She needs a name," Dutch said finally. "I know. You two decided on one?" "We had a list. Never picked." Caleb rubbed his face. "Feels wrong to name her when we don't know if—" "Name her anyway. Give her that much." That night, Caleb asked Mara about names. She was exhausted, still recovering, but her eyes sharpened when he brought it up. "Grace," she said immediately. "I want to name her Grace. Grace Ryland. Grace Emma Ryland." Mara looked at him, defiant, daring him to argue. "After my first daughter, so she's always with us." Caleb took her hand. "Grace Emma Ryland, it's perfect." They told the nurses. Updated the little card on the incubator. And somehow, having a name made Grace more real. Made her something beyond the fragile collection of bones and skin fighting in the plastic box. The first week passed, then the second. Grace hung on with a stubbornness that reminded Caleb of her mother. Her weight crept up slowly. 3 pounds, 4 ounces, 3 pounds 7, 3 pounds 12. She graduated from the ventilator to a nasal cannula, started breathing more on her own. The doctors remained cautious, told them not to celebrate too early. But Caleb saw hope in their eyes where before there'd been only caution. Mara was discharged after a week, but refused to leave the hospital. She moved into the Ronald McDonald house across the street, spent every waking hour in the NICU. Caleb drove back and forth from the ranch, managing what couldn't be ignored, then returning to Billings. On Grace's 3-week birthday, they were finally allowed to hold her. The nurse placed the tiny baby in Mara's arms, careful of all the wires and tubes still connected. Mara stared down at her daughter with an expression Caleb had never seen before, raw terror mixed with overwhelming love. "Hi, baby," Mara whispered. "Hi, Grace, I'm your mom." Grace's eyes opened, dark blue, unfocused but open, looking up at the face that matched the voice she'd been hearing through the incubator walls. Mara started crying. "She's so beautiful, she's so—" The words dissolved into sobs. Caleb stood beside them, one hand on Mara's shoulder, looking down at his daughter. His family. This messy, complicated, hard-won family that had almost not existed. "Thank you," he said quietly. Mara looked up. "For what?" "For fighting. For staying. For giving me this." "I didn't do it for you." "I know, but I'm grateful anyway." They stayed like that until Grace fell asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling against Mara's, two hearts beating in sync. Grace came home after 6 weeks in the NICU. 4 pounds, 8 ounces, still small, still fragile, but breathing on her own, eating on her own, living. The homecoming should have been triumphant. Instead, it was terrifying. Mara checked on Grace every 15 minutes, sometimes more. She'd stand over the bassinet, hand hovering over Grace's chest to make sure she was still breathing. Caleb would wake at 3 in the morning to find Mara's side of the bed empty, would go downstairs to find her in the nursery, just watching. "She's okay," he'd say gently. "I know. I need to make sure." "You need to sleep." "I can't. What if something happens while I'm sleeping?" Caleb understood. After losing Emma, after the emergency delivery, after 6 weeks of not knowing if Grace would survive, of course Mara couldn't sleep. Of course she was terrified. But exhaustion was building. Mara looked hollowed out, dark circles under her eyes, moving through the days like a ghost. 2 weeks after coming home, she fell asleep feeding Grace and didn't wake up when the babies started crying. Caleb found them in the nursery, Grace wailing, Mara unconscious in the rocking chair. He took Grace, checked her over, got her settled. Then he woke Mara. She came to with a gasp, immediately reaching for the baby. "Where is she?" "She's fine, but you're not." "I'm okay." "You're not. Look at yourself, Mara. You haven't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch in weeks. You're running on empty." "I can handle it." "You can't. And you shouldn't have to." Caleb knelt in front of her. "I'm here. Dutch is here. We hired Emma Collins to help during the day. You don't have to do this alone. She's my responsibility." "She's our responsibility. Ours, not just yours." He took her hands. "I know you're scared. I know losing Emma broke something in you that hasn't healed, but you can't keep vigil forever. You're going to collapse. What if something happens and I'm not there? Then we deal with it, together. But killing yourself trying to prevent every possible catastrophe doesn't help anyone, least of all Grace." Mara looked at him with exhausted, desperate eyes. "I can't lose another child." "I know. But you can't save her by destroying yourself either." It took another week, but slowly Mara started to let go. Started to trust that Grace would keep breathing without constant monitoring. Started to sleep more than an hour at a time. The change in her was remarkable. Color returned to her face. The frantic edge to her movements softened. She started smiling again, real smiles, not the forced ones she'd been wearing like armor. Grace thrived, gained weight steadily, hitting developmental milestones the pediatrician said were right on track for her adjusted age. She smiled at 6 weeks, laughed at 3 months, started reaching for things at 4 months. The town watched, some with genuine happiness, others with thinly veiled surprise that Mara had managed to produce a healthy child, a few with lingering judgment. Caleb caught whispers at the feed store when he went in for supplies. Surprised she didn't break the poor thing, big as she is. Baby's lucky she survived. Mara Bennett doesn't exactly scream healthy pregnancy. He turned around so fast the speaker, Janet Hollis, the same woman who'd gossiped on day 1, took a step back. "You got something to say about my wife?" Caleb asked quietly. Janet's face went red. "I didn't mean—" "Yeah, you did. You meant exactly what you said. So let me make something clear. Mara is the mother of my child, the woman I love. And if I hear one more word, one more whisper, one more snide comment about her size, her worth, or her ability to be a mother, there will be consequences. Are we clear?" The store had gone silent, everyone watching. Janet nodded quickly. "Clear." Caleb paid for his supplies and left. Word spread fast. The whispers didn't stop completely, but they got quieter. And the people who mattered, Dutch, Ray, Tommy, the few friends Caleb actually cared about, made it known that Mara was off limits. Things settled into a rhythm. Grace grew. Mara recovered. The ranch kept running. Life moved forward. Then, on a Tuesday in July, Marcus Calloway's lawyer called. Caleb answered, already tense. "What do you want?" "Mr. Ryland, I'm calling to inform you that my client is filing a lawsuit against you for defamation, harassment, and tortious interference with business relationships." Caleb's stomach dropped. "On what grounds?" "You made numerous false accusations about my client's business practices, contacted his clients, damaged his reputation, and caused significant financial harm. The suit is for $2 million in damages." That's bullshit. Everything I said was true." "Then you'll have an opportunity to prove that in court. You'll be served within the week." The lawyer hung up. Caleb stood there, phone in hand, feeling the ground shift under his feet. Mara came into the kitchen, Grace on her hip. "Who is that?" "Marcus's lawyer. He's suing me." The color drained from Mara's face. "For what?" "Defamation. $2 million. He can't. We don't have—" Mara sat down hard, clutching Grace. "This is my fault. I should have just stayed with him. Should have worked off the debt instead of—" "Don't." Caleb crossed to her. "This isn't your fault. It's his. He's trying to punish us for getting away. And he's going to succeed. We can't afford to fight this. We barely recovered from buying the land back. Then we sell something else. There's nothing left to sell. We're already mortgaged to the limit. If he wins this lawsuit—" Mara's voice broke. "We'll lose everything. The ranch, the house, everything." Grace started crying, picking up on her mother's distress. Mara rocked her automatically, tears streaming down her own face. Caleb felt rage building. Marcus had taken Mara's money, her freedom, her peace of mind, and now he was coming for what little they'd managed to build. Not this time. Caleb called his lawyer, then the journalist friend, then every single person he'd contacted before about Marcus's business practices. He told them the lawsuit was coming and asked them to go public, to share their stories, to make noise. Some refused, too scared, but Jennifer Ortega didn't refuse. She called the local news, told them about Marcus, about the predatory loans, about the threats. She gave them copies of her contract, her evidence, everything she'd been too afraid to use before. The story ran 3 days later, local at first. Then it got picked up regionally, then nationally. Suddenly, Marcus Calloway wasn't a respectable businessman. He was the face of predatory lending. Other victims started coming forward. People who'd been too scared to speak alone found courage in numbers. A federal investigation was opened. Marcus's offices were raided. Records were seized. The lawsuit against Caleb was quietly dropped. Marcus himself disappeared from public view, his lawyer issuing a statement about cooperating with authorities and making amends. Caleb watched it unfold with grim satisfaction, not celebrating, but relieved. Marcus couldn't hurt them anymore. Couldn't hurt anyone anymore. But the fight had taken its toll. The stress, the fear, the constant waiting for the other shoe to drop, it left Mara brittle. She didn't sleep well, jumped at unexpected noises, held Grace tighter than necessary. "It's over," Caleb kept telling her. "He's done. We're safe. For now," Mara would say. "But what about next time? What happens when the next Marcus shows up?" "There won't be a next time." "You don't know that." She was right. Didn't know that. Couldn't guarantee safety or happiness or any of the things he desperately wanted to give her. All he could offer was himself, his presence, his stubborn refusal to leave. The breakthrough came on an ordinary Saturday in September. Caleb was fixing fence while Mara watched Grace play in a baby bouncer on a blanket in the grass. The sky was that particular Montana blue that made everything look sharper, clearer. "I've been thinking," Mara said suddenly. Caleb looked up. "About?" "About staying." "You are staying." "No, I mean really staying. Not just existing here until the next crisis, not just waiting for things to fall apart." She paused. "Actually building a life with you, here." Caleb set down his tools. "What changed?" "I did. Maybe. I don't know." Mara watched Grace grab for her toes. "I've spent so long running, from Marcus, from my past, from myself. And I'm tired. Tired of being afraid all the time. Tired of waiting for everything good to be taken away." "So what do you want to do?" I want to marry you. The words came out in a rush. Actually, marry you. Not just live together, not just co-parent. I want to stand in front of people and say, yes, this is my person, and I choose him, and I'm not running anymore. Caleb felt something crack open in his chest. Yeah? Yeah. Mara looked at him, eyes bright. If you still want that, want me. Caleb crossed the yard in 3 strides, pulled her up, and kissed her hard enough that Grace made a surprised noise from her bouncer. I've wanted that since the day you fixed my gate, he said against her mouth. Took me a while to figure it out, but yeah. I want you. Want this. Want all of it. Mara laughed, a sound of pure relief. Okay then. Okay then. They got married 6 weeks later in a small ceremony at the ranch. Dutch stood as best man. Ray and Tommy came. Emma Collins brought her family. A handful of people from town who'd proven themselves to be actual friends rather than gossips. Mara wore a simple dress, cream-colored, that made her look radiant. She'd lost some of the baby weight, but was still soft around the middle, still heavier than magazine covers would call ideal. She didn't care. Neither did Caleb. The vows were short, honest. No grand promises about perfection or forever. Just commitments to show up, to try, to choose each other even when it was hard. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Caleb took his time about it, making Mara blush and the small crowd cheer. Grace, held by Dutch, made happy baby noises through the whole thing. The reception was barbecue and beer in the yard, simple and perfect. People danced to music from someone's phone speaker, told stories, laughed. Janet Hollis showed up uninvited, bearing a gift. Mara stared at her. I owe you an apology, Janet said quietly. For the things I said, the way I treated you. That wasn't right. Mara's jaw tightened. No, it wasn't. I am small-minded, scared of things that are different, and you scared me because you didn't care what I thought, didn't try to fit in or make yourself smaller. Janet's voice shook. My daughter heard me talking about you once. She called me a bully, said I was the reason she was afraid to be herself. She was right. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm trying to do better, be better, and that starts with saying I'm sorry. Janet held out the gift. This doesn't fix anything, but it's a start. Mara took the wrapped box, turned it over in her hands. Then she looked at Janet. Thank you for the apology, for trying. Janet nodded and left quickly, like she might cry if she stayed longer. Caleb came up beside Mara. You okay? I don't know, maybe. Mara looked at the gift. She's one person. The town's full of people who think like she did. But she's trying to change, that's something. Is it enough? Probably not. But it's a start. They opened the gift later, a handmade baby quilt with Grace's name embroidered in the corner. It was beautiful. Mara cried looking at it. I don't know if I can forgive her, she admitted. You don't have to. Not right away. Maybe not ever. Caleb put his arm around her. But you can choose to move forward. That's all anyone can do. Life settled again. Grace grew into a toddler, walking at 13 months, talking at 18, developing a personality that was equal parts stubborn and sweet. She looked like both of them somehow. Had Mara's gray eyes and Caleb's dark hair, her mother's determination and her father's quiet strength. The ranch prospered. Caleb hired more help, expanded operations, rebuilt what the crisis with Marcus had cost them. Mara took over the equipment maintenance, then started a small side business fixing machinery for other ranches. Turned out people didn't care about her size when she could repair a broken combine, and half the time it would take anyone else. They weren't perfect. They fought sometimes, about money, about parenting, about stupid things that didn't matter. But they fought fair, and they always came back to each other. On Grace's second birthday, they had a party at the ranch. Real friends came, the kind who showed up when things were hard, not just when times were good. Caleb watched Mara chase Grace across the yard, both of them laughing, and felt something settle in his chest. Peace, maybe. Or just acceptance that this was his life now. This messy, complicated, beautiful life that he'd almost not had because he'd been too scared to let someone in. Dutch walked up beside him, beer in hand. You look happy. I am. Took you long enough. Yeah, Caleb smiled. Worth the wait, though. She gonna be okay? Dutch nodded toward Mara. With everything that happened. The town, Marcus, all of it. I think so. She's stronger than people give her credit for. Stronger than she gives herself credit for. And you? Caleb thought about it. About Sarah, about the years of grief and isolation, about Mara showing up asking for work and changing everything. I'm good, he said finally. Really good. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Grace was asleep, Caleb and Mara sat on the porch. The same porch where he'd first seen her step out of that rattling truck, sunburned and determined. You ever regret it? Mara asked. Everything that happened, everything it cost. Not once. Not even when Marcus sued us. When we almost lost the ranch? Not even then. Mara leaned against him. I regret that I didn't find you sooner, that we lost so much time. We found each other when we needed to. That's enough. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out. Grace made a noise through the baby monitor. Not crying, just dreaming. Both of them tensed, relaxed when she settled. We should have another one, Mara said suddenly. Caleb looked at her. You can't. The hysterectomy. I know, but we could adopt. There are kids out there who need homes, who need people willing to fight for them. She turned to face him. What do you think? Caleb thought about all the ways love could happen, all the ways family could be built, not just through blood or genetics or any of the traditional roots, but through choice, through showing up, through refusing to give up. I think, he said slowly, that sounds exactly right. Mara smiled. Yeah? Yeah. They started the process 6 months later. It took time, paperwork, interviews, home visits, endless waiting. But finally, they were matched with a 3-year-old boy named Lucas, who'd been in foster care since birth. He was small for his age, quiet, afraid of loud noises and sudden movements. He'd been through 3 foster homes and had trust issues that ran bone deep. Mara understood that. Understood what it felt like to be let down by the people who were supposed to protect you. She was gentle with him, patient, never pushing. Caleb taught him about the horses, about ranch work, about being strong and kind at the same time. It took 6 months before Lucas smiled. 9 months before he called them mom and dad. A year before he stopped flinching when people moved too fast. But they had time. They had patience. And most importantly, they had love. The kind that didn't demand perfection, just presence. Grace adored her new brother from day one. Followed him everywhere, chattering constantly, wearing down his defenses with pure toddler persistence. By the time Lucas had been with them a year, they were inseparable. The town had opinions, of course. Some people thought adoption was admirable. Others whispered about why they didn't just have another biological child, conveniently forgetting Mara's hysterectomy. A few made comments about taking in a damaged kid. Caleb and Mara ignored them. They'd learned that lesson. The people who mattered supported them. The people who didn't weren't worth the energy. Life wasn't perfect. Lucas had nightmares. Grace went through a phase of hitting other kids at daycare. Money was tight some months. The ranch had bad years along with the good ones. But they faced it together, as a family, as a team. 5 years after Mara had shown up asking for work, Caleb stood in the same yard where he'd first seen her and thought about how different everything was. The ranch looked better, new fences, updated equipment, a fresh coat of paint on the barn. But more than that, it felt alive. Felt like a home instead of just a place he existed. Grace and Lucas were playing in the yard, Grace bossing her brother around while he patiently went along with whatever game she'd invented. Mara was in the workshop, fixing a tractor engine while listening to music too loud. Dutch was retiring next month. Ray had taken a job on a bigger ranch in Wyoming. Tommy had finally grown up, gotten married, and moved to his wife's family farm in Idaho. Everything changed. Everything always changed. But the important things, love, family, choosing each other, those stayed constant. Mara came out of the workshop, wiping her hands on a rag. She'd cut her hair short, had new scars on her arms from hot metal and sharp edges. She still moved with that same economical grace, still looked at Caleb like he was someone worth seeing. "Dinner in an hour," she said. "Need help?" "Always." They went inside together, calling the kids to wash up. The evening routine was familiar now. Cooking, eating, bath time, stories, tucking two small bodies into beds and kissing them goodnight. After the kids were asleep, Caleb and Mara stood in the hallway between the two bedrooms, just breathing. "Some days I can't believe this is real," Mara said quietly. "That I get to have this. After everything. It's real. Promise?" "Promise." Caleb pulled her close. "We built this, you and me, from nothing, from broken pieces, and it's ours. Nobody can take it away." Mara rested her head against his chest. "I love you. I love you too." They stood there in the dim hallway, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and built something stronger than what they'd lost. Not perfect. Never perfect. But real. Honest. Theirs. In the morning there would be work. Fences to mend, animals to feed, children to raise, the same challenges that existed every day. But tonight there was just this moment, this family, this hard-won peace. And it was enough. It was everything. Years later, someone asked Caleb what he'd learned from all of it, from losing Sarah, from meeting Mara, from fighting Marcus